Hey, it's Coach M here. Are you wondering how in the world to get your teenager to take your advice, to do what you tell them to do? The truth is, it's all about the amount of influence that you have with them. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to increase your level of influence so they actually start considering what you have to say. Coming up. If you haven't already done so, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, that would be great. I'm on a mission to spread these tools on this channel out to as many people as possible. We all are in different stages of our lives dealing with certain struggles. And the more tools and strategies that we have to help us through those struggles, the better. So help me to help others by hitting that subscribe button. Thank you. Okay, is it driving you absolutely bonkers that your teenager doesn't ever want to take your advice? That they are constantly rolling their eyes every time you try to talk to them? Or they tell you, I know, no matter what you're saying to them. So annoying, right? Because all you're trying to do is help them in some way. After all, isn't it your job as a parent to teach your kid between right and wrong? What if I told you not exactly? I love the quote, parenting as you know it stops at 13. Actually, I think it's closer to 11 or 12 years old, to be honest. I know what you're thinking. What? How does parenting stop at 13 or 11 or 12 years old? Hold on, let me explain. The parenting paradigm shifts, and it's no longer about teaching your child the way that you always have up to that point. Your parenting has to change from teaching to influencing. Isn't it funny how parenting, when our children are young, gives us the illusion of control? Control on what our child does or doesn't do, control on what they wear, where they go. We even think that we have control on the type of person that they become. That illusion of control makes it so difficult to shift our parenting to one of influence when our child reaches the teen or preteen years. I go into this concept a little bit more in depth in this video here, and it's linked in the description down below. Basically, all we have at this stage with our kids is the chance to influence their decisions, and that's it. Now, of course, we have some control over certain privileges that our teenager has and whether or not they get those privileges, but that's a whole other video that I'll do at a later time. In today's video, I'm going to solely focus on what you need to master in order to have more influence with your teenager. The equation that I like to use for this is influence equals connection, and connection is empathy plus curiosity plus vulnerability. How you think, feel, and act determines how influential you can be. This is the funny thing about influence. The moment that you try to influence someone, you lose your ability to influence them. Let me repeat that. The moment that you're actively trying to influence someone, you actually lose your ability to influence them. What does this mean? If influence is connection, and it's not just any type of connection, it's connection on a deeper emotional level, then the minute that I'm focused on what I want this other person to do, how I'm going to influence them to do what I want, I instantly start to move out of that true deep connection with that person. Because connection is empathy, curiosity, and vulnerability, which is not an I-focused response, but rather a you-focused response. So let's break this down a little further. When you look at the components of connection, which is empathy, curiosity, and vulnerability, what immediately comes up for you? What thoughts do you have about it? Are you thinking, I am empathic, curious, and vulnerable with my teenager, and they still don't listen? Or maybe you're starting to question whether the way that you think you show empathy, curiosity, and vulnerability with your teenager isn't exactly what it should look like. If this is the case, for the following statements that I'm about to give you, I want you to ask yourself the question, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how often do you honestly respond this way? Here are the statements. I listen while thinking about how to respond or what I'm going to say next. I don't always take my teenager's feelings into consideration, and I use logic to explain my stance. I use the phrase, I know how you feel, but I don't always try to understand what my teenager is feeling or why they're doing something in a certain situation. I think I have figured out what is really going on for them. I change the conversation quickly to try to lighten the mood or get them to feel better. I ask leading questions to get them to accept my ideas, solutions, and conclusions. I'm curious and inquiring about what is important to them. I use open-ended questions to encourage them to share more with me. I'm quick to assume I know what's going on in a situation. I make judgments about my teenager's comments or behavior. Now, for the statements in which you scored higher than a 3, what do you think contributes to why you respond in those ways? You can't influence and develop a deeper relationship with your teen if you aren't open to learning more about your teenager and more about yourself. Curiosity is key in this equation for influence. Developing true curiosity is remembering that in spite of how perceptive you think you are and how well you think you know the other person, your teenager in this case, you don't actually know what is going on for them. This mindset keeps you humble and it allows you to ask the right questions to discover more information. Being truly curious is about what the other person is feeling, thinking, and believing, and it can be much harder than we think. It requires a letting go of our agenda, our expectations that we have of this other person. And curiosity is about refusing to allow our instant assumptions and beliefs to take a hold of our mind and to dominate the conversation. We not only have to practice restraint of those automated thoughts, but we have to be willing to push way beyond them. Curiosity is the soul's quest to be understood more fully. So when we give this to our teenager, we are giving them an opportunity to feel understood, a chance to truly be seen and heard. And this is the ultimate gift that we can give our kids. Now, not all questions of curiosity are good questions. Open-ended, non-judgmental questions asked at the right time are the most powerful, productive questions you can ask. And they increase your ability to influence your teenager. If you want to help identifying great open-ended questions to ask your teen, just check out the video here and it's linked in the description down below. You'll want to limit the amount of closed-ended questions or pseudo-questions that you ask your teenager. Those questions are often geared towards unsolicited advice giving. And I'm going to tell you right now, advice is usually not helpful. What I tell all of my coaching clients is, don't give advice to your teenager. Advice oftentimes creates disconnection, and disconnection is the complete opposite of influence. When it comes to giving advice, we tend to be so eager to help our child, which causes us to come up with a solution that we think they should implement. But that solution comes from our own experiences, our own perspectives, our own agenda, our own expectations, which a lot of times has fear attached to it. And more times than we realize, the solution that we come up with doesn't always fit the current situation with our teenager. We want it to, and we believe wholeheartedly that our solution is the best for them. But this isn't always the case. When we give advice, we tend to respond from what we would do, what we think is best. But influence comes when we're fully taking into account who the other person is, based on their strengths, their feelings, their experiences, their inner dialogue, their emotional needs. So stop giving advice and start getting curious instead. Another crucial element of the influence equation is empathy. Now, there is a big difference between empathy and sympathy. You want to make sure that you're practicing empathy and not sympathy. Sympathy is acknowledging someone's hurt and providing comfort, which sounds great, but it doesn't involve identifying with how the person is feeling. And this is a huge distinction here. When someone sympathizes with you, it feels as though they pity you or they feel sorry for you, that they don't fully understand what you're going through. And oftentimes that can really make us feel worse because it feels like the other person doesn't understand what we're feeling. And it makes us feel like we're alone in how we're feeling in our emotional state. Empathy, on the other hand, is identifying with the feelings that the other person is experiencing. It's about meeting the person where they're at. And by showing that you understand what the other person is feeling, you're giving them what they need emotionally in that moment. So, with your teenager, always ask yourself, am I acknowledging their pain and allowing them to experience it? Am I putting myself in their shoes and seeing the world as they see it? Am I speaking to what they want as opposed to what I want for them? And am I responding from a place of non-judgment? And the final component to increasing your influence with your teenager is making vulnerability the norm within your conversations with your teenager. Now, this one can be extremely hard for us parents. We believe that our teenager needs to see us as the authoritative figure, the parent, the boss. Influence doesn't quite work that way. It doesn't work when the hierarchy gap is too large. Meaning, prime example, your boss's boss, or even your boss's boss's boss that you don't know very well, they don't know you very well, maybe you've met them one time in a meeting a long time ago, is not going to have much influence over you when it comes to your personal decisions about your personal life, right? There is no difference with your teenagers. When we act as though we never make mistakes, as though we have to always model everything perfectly for them, all we do is create a wider and wider gap between us, which means that our sphere of influence diminishes more and more, the wider and wider that gap gets. Now, I am not telling you to become your teenager's best friend and let them do whatever they want. Please, please, please don't do that. They need you to lead them, to be the leader in their life, but not the distant, cold leader that seems perfect, never does anything wrong, and always does the right thing. They need the leader that's relatable, the leader that owns their mistakes and is willing to talk about them, the leader that takes the risk of being vulnerable to show others that they're not alone in their struggle. This does not mean that you tell your teenager everything about everything, but sharing some of your hardships, some of your mistakes, makes you more human in your teenager's eyes. This is the thing. Without vulnerability, you can't have a deeper relationship where influence is possible. The very act of self-disclosure of vulnerability increases trust and creates opportunity for more connection. And as we know, influence equals connection. Remember, influence comes when we understand how to hold space for someone else, when we practice vulnerability and we know the right questions to ask at the right time. It's also about supporting the other person in achieving what they want, which is best for them, not necessarily what we want or what we think is best for them. Start working on mastering these 3 components, and you'll develop the exact connection that you need with your teenager to produce the type of influence that you're seeking. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with anyone that you think may benefit from it. If you want to see more videos like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and click on the bell icon to get notified when I upload a new video. Wishing you an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.